Hey guys, RC here, back with an update video for Draft Day Sports College Football. Um, I am in the process of putting up these videos one or two at a time, every couple of days, just, so you can keep track of how my recruiting went during this walkthrough season. And the video was to serve a couple of purposes. The primary purpose of this particular one was in fact to try to ask some questions, get some clarification on some things that I personally didn't understand, things that other people were saying they didn't understand. I hate that pop-up. I wish I could turn it off. Things of that nature. But secondarily, and no less importantly, it was a recruiting walkthrough. So this series will go week by week, showing in depth how I am addressing recruiting. But and I'm not doing it perfectly. I'm not doing it the right way, maybe. But at the end of the day, it was to try a few new things. It was to try some ideas that I had been given by a couple of different people. OK Bandit gave me some feedback on recruiting based on some questions that I had asked him. Disp is a guy on the forums over at Wolverine Studios that had given me some ideas on how he did things. And I think it's really a case, there's more than one way to do it, but at the end of the day, there's a few things that you kind of have to do in order to be successful at it. So the big thing now, of course, I'm here at the end of the year, so I can't scout or recruit anybody. This is actually the recruiting class for for the following season. Let's see. I don't think. Okay. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Okay. So first off, let's kind of start off with a little trick that I learned, and this came to me from a guy called Francua, he's a guy I respect a lot. He does a lot of things. We interact a lot through several different leagues, and this is something he pointed out, and I was not aware of this. So George Dunn, he's the #1 recruit in the country. Now, I don't know if he's on my recommended target list, but my top recommended target is #4, so I should have a shot at least of possibly landing the #1 player. Now, keeping in mind, looking at him, he's from Washington. I'm in Louisiana with LSU, so it depends on what he's interested in. So we're going to schedule the interview right off the bat. That's one thing. I think in the previous season, I was following Disp's suggestion, and he was doing scouting initially so he could have an idea of what the player's skills were. But Francua approaches it from a different perspective. He says schedule the interview for everybody first and then worry about scouting, because he said, look, if he's the #1 player in the country, he's probably going to be good. You don't really need to scout him to figure out that he's good. What you need to do is figure out what his motivation is to either sign with your school or not sign with your school. And the only way to know that is to do the interview, because remember, the interview gives us this information here. What does he value? All right. Now, here's another thing. All I have done at this point is I've added him and set an interview. So here was another suggestion. You can actually now go into the scouting report, and you'll see his interest level is a 33. Now, here's the trick. I can put on my 10 points, go back to the scouting report, and now his interest has jumped to a 96. Well, what I'm being told is if you don't recruit him at all by assigning recruiting points, he has a little interest in you, but now that you're actively recruiting him, this is calling the kid up, making tweets about him on your team Twitter account. This is all the stuff that Jim Harbaugh does for Michigan in real life, sleeping over at the recruit's house, and climbing a tree, and this is those things. And so now we can see the kid has gotten a high boost, and we know he is interested in us. So that's where you need to assign the points. Now, here's the second part of this suggestion or tip by Francua. If they are not pretty high up into the green, and you can be in the green in the 60s, and he is saying don't let that scare you off. But if they stay down in that red range, or the orange range, like 30 to 50%, they're not very interested in you, even with you going after them full bore with 10 points. So that would be a player that you might, if that was this player, then what you may want to do is cancel those 10 points, cancel your interview, and go ahead and click him to hide him. And at that point, he's no longer showing on your list, and you're not going to actively recruit him. All right, so let's kind of do it again here. I'm gonna add this Doherty kid. All right, so he has a 20 interest. We're going to schedule the interview, and we're going to pop 10 points on him. We're going to go back to the scouting report, and he's jumped up to a 98 interest. Okay, now this first guy was a 96. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Just because they have a 96 or a 98 does not mean they're going to sign with you. In the same manner, just because they have a 60 or a 70 interest does not mean they will not sign with you. Okay? There's a lot that comes into play. Let's see. All right, I really don't want to do this, but, well, yeah, I'm not going to get into that, but I was going to go ahead and sim ahead and look at what his results were, but, well, I may have to do that. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and auto recruit. Training camp. All right, we've already been through that. All right, so we're going to run training camp. Bear with me here. I wasn't planning on going into this much depth, but I really want to be able to show while it's okay. Let's see. Close. Home. Emails. All right, Villegas, disappointment. All right, so here's your... Now again, this was the very first sim after we ended the season last year. So we actually recruit our guys. So we can actually go now and look at... So we finished with the number 2 class. Our relative rank is 13th, which is more indicative of your efforts. That's based on your average stars and the general quality, things of that nature. All right, now we do have that set to auto recruit. Recruiting. Let's see. All right, I do need to probably set red shirts. Let's go ahead and look at our roster, and we'll sort by quarterback. All right, so here we have our 4 freshman quarterbacks that we brought in last year, and if we sort them by OVR, so our senior Goforth is our top freshman, another senior Bosevert, another freshman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into Goforth and I'm going to redshirt him, and I'm going to redshirt Bosafort. The reason I'm going to choose them, I know Melton's going to be my starter this year just because he's better. Keeps my two best freshmen with 4 years of eligibility, and it gets these two freshmen who are not bad, but it gives me them as backups. All right, so that would basically be my thinking in that. What I don't know is I don't know if they can transfer. I don't think there's transfers in this game. Let's see. And all right, no freshmen there. No freshmen there. All right, seniors, a lot of seniors. All right, you know what? I'm going to redshirt him because he's already fourth string, and I have 3 seniors. So I'm going to redshirt him, and I'm going to redshirt that guy. Now, I may not be doing this the right way, but again, I just want to make sure that I am putting in the 82. Wow. And here's the other thing: you can actually recruit so heavy at a position. It's kind of odd. I'm not used to that, being able to go so high. So I don't know. Should I cut these guys? Should I redshirt these guys? You know, what should I be doing here? Let's see, 83. We're going to redshirt him. I'm going to go ahead and redshirt him, even though he's not somebody that I would think would be a long-term solution. All right, see, he's 3rd string as a freshman, but I do have sophomores, so let's go ahead and redshirt him. Now see, I'm not going to redshirt Ivy because he's already my #1 rated linebacker on my roster, so he's going to play as a freshman. But what I am going to do then is I'm going to redshirt this sophomore kid. All right, same thing with Hammond. He's a freshman, but he's going to be a starting cornerback based on his overall rating. So we're going to go with him. Same thing with Hutto. He redshirted last year, it looks, or his freshman year. Now McCormick, I'm going to go ahead and redshirt him. Alright, we're going to go ahead and redshirt him. Basically what I'm looking at is, are they going to be starters? And if they're not, then let's save that year of eligibility. Wow. Which one of these guys? Agility, speed. One of them's going to be a backup. I'm going to go ahead and redshirt rushing. No particular reason. You know, I mean, these guys look pretty even. Let's see, anybody else? All right, so let's see. Now we can go ahead and set red shirts. Yes, I do want to do that. All right, regular season. So I need to go into game plan, save. I need to go to roster, depth chart. And see here again, it's not filling in that master depth chart all the way. I don't know why. And it's a starting tight end. So let's see, if I go to my pro set, it has my tight end right there, Pike. but Pike's listed as a number 2 tight end. So I don't know. Don't know what causes that. So again, this is something I've noticed, the master depth chart being left blank. So here we are in the second season, and it's still happening. Nickelback as well. Don't know if it's that we don't have enough players. Not sure what causes that. Now, I do remember tight end. We had a lot. I mean, we had like 6 or 7 tight ends on the roster. All right, we're going to have auto recruit on, but I did already recruit, and I'm going to go ahead and offer these 2 guys manually. And let's make it, well, I don't need their names. We've got number 1 is defensive end Dunn, and number 2 is defensive end Doherty. Alright, so we're going to go ahead. It's auto recruits on, so the game itself will figure out what we're going to do. I just want to get those 2 players particularly, so then we can look at the results, and then I want to bring up some other information that we've gotten. So I think this has already covered a few good suggestions. Alright, now let's see. Week 1, LSU won. We beat Western Michigan, so that's good. I'm not going to save this because I actually will probably want to come back and redo it. Alright, we're going to go to home, email. Team captains were elected, training report, and 21 scholarships. Alright, so we're going to go back to recruiting, and we want to look at the people that we are recruiting. Alright, now you can see the game has added in a lot of other people. So I added in number 1. Let's look at just targets. So I added in number 1 and 2. They've added 7, 8, 23, 38, 49, 56, 57, 59. So they've added just a good chunk of the top 100. And for whatever reason, they've also gone after this number 1920 guy. Now, that really stands out as, you know, right in the face that's odd. Okay, so without going in and looking at this guy, I don't know. And of course, I don't think the game does interviews. And you can see it's done 9 points, whereas the recommendation is 10. It looks like they did 9 because they were able to do 9 on everybody. Alright, so here's where we want to start looking back at our scouting report. Alright, so he's gone down from a 96 to a 94. He has gone from a 98 to a 75. Alright, wow. So this is where you have to start looking, but let's go back into that scouting report. All right, so now that we've done the 1 week and we've done the interview, that is what opens up, excuse me, that's what has opened up this column of information under player profile. And it's in particular, it's these ones in blue that we're looking at. We're looking at everything, but these ones in blue is what the player values. Now, before we get into discussing that, I want to go into the post that we made. And Brooks is the actual person that programmed this game. This is his game. So if anybody knows this game, it's this guy. And so here's what he basically says. And I was, we were addressing a lot of things up in the post, but close to home matters. A 100 rating means it matters more. However, this is important because I did not know this. A 0 means it matters less, but it still matters to some degree. All right, so let's go back into here. So this guy values market size at a 92, winning 87, close to home 87, playing time 84, loyalty 45, security 15, prestige 4. All right, so that does what if you looked at this, you would go, well, I could be a 30 prestige team, and I could still maybe recruit against this 90 prestige team. Well, you're right. He is saying that prestige is not the #1 factor, but it will still potentially make a difference. So no matter how high or low these are, it's an accumulation of all of these factors put together. And so that's why you might have a guy like here that values close to home, and he's from Washington, but he may still come to Louisiana State because maybe he likes the market size, and that's going to depend. Is he being recruited by Oregon State in Corvallis? Washington State up in that area? Is he being recruited by USC down in Los Angeles? So all of that, all of that will make a difference in his decision-making process. And so, at the end of the day, you're basically left with a guess. Now, you can use this to make an educated guess, okay? Now, let's get back into Brooks's comments. Basically, for all other personalities, see #1, they all work the same way. They all matter, so they all affect the overall decision regardless of what that number is, which is basically what we were just saying. So even though this is a 4, that is, the prestige is still going to factor somewhat into his decision-making process. Okay? All right. Interest. This is one of the questions that I had. What does, this is his interest level. This is not the question that I asked. Okay. Interest is a gauge to see how much they value your recruiting points. The more you put in, the more the interest goes up. If a recruit likes you a lot, the points can get up into the 90s. But keep in mind, recruits like a lot of schools. So you could have multiple schools with interest in the 90s. Then it's a toss-up to which school the kid will go to. Don't assume just because you have a 90 or higher interest that it's automatic. Also, do not assume that just because you have a 40 interest that it's unwinnable. It all depends on the other schools recruiting a kid. It could mean your points are too low. And what he's talking about there is putting in 9 against 10 or 5 against 10. If I'm putting 10 and you're putting 5, then my points are going to lean more heavily on that kid. And if you're putting 10 and I'm only putting 9, it sounds close, but the kid basically knows, hey, that school's not trying as hard to get me, if that makes any sense. So it could mean the kid's waiting for more points to build up, or he might not like you that much. So it's risk versus reward. If you hang on too long, other stronger schools can swoop in and you waste your points. If you walk too soon, you never know who may have dropped out and left a 5-star open for signing late in the season. Also, higher rated players wait longer to sign. They want to be wined and dined. So your guys in the top 100, they're not going to sign until typically after week 10 of the season. It's your 3-star guys that you can snap up earlier. And then, of course, if you're a team that's only going after 4- and 5-star players and you miss out on a bunch of those, other teams that have been maybe more realistic and gone after 3-star players have already snapped them up, and now you're left, digging farther down into the pile looking for players. 3-star players, speaking of, 3-star players are not bad. They make up the bulk of the signings. There's more 3-star players than anything else. They may not have a 100 OVR, and in fact, I'm curious. Let me go look at my roster. All right, so just for comparison's sake, here's a 5-star player with a 93 OVR, a 5-star player with a 97, a 5-star with an 86. Now, some of these guys are freshmen, and those numbers will go up, right? But, here's a 5-star with an 82. here's a 4-star with an 87 that actually ranks better than him and this 5-star guy. And he's a freshman as well. Now getting, a lot of those high 80s, low 90s, mid 80, low 80, 83, 83. Now we get down into the 3-stars, and here's what they're talking about. This guy's a 3-star, but he's an 88. There's an 80, a 93-star. So there's a guy that really blossomed. Even though he was a 3-star, he turned into basically a 5-star player with a 90 OVR rating. Same here. So that's what they're talking about. You can find guys that will turn out to be very good. And even if we're looking at by class, because you want to say, okay, well, my seniors, all right, well, here's an 88, 88, 89. All right, there's a 4-star 89. Well, I've got a couple of 3-star 89s. Let's see. I've got a few 3-star 90s, 91. So these guys are just as good as most of their 4-star and even a few 5-star counterparts. So if that helps make sense of what he's talking about here. The recruiting is meant to be realistic, but it is gamified. I mean, it is a game at the end of the day. It's not supposed to be easy, not supposed to be predictable. We did that on purpose. Now, they do have a new patch coming out. They are taking a lot of feedback from my videos as well as other discussions that have been going on. Now, in the current version, a couple of the properties don't matter for recruiting, but in this new patch they will, and Bandit will update the guides, which are found on the Wolverine site, which we talked about in the first and second video episodes. So I guess what he's referring to there is, let's see, recruiting, possibly like security and loyalty, the ones that we talked about multiple times, not knowing what they do. Well, those may not even be implemented into the game yet. So they're there, but, and what's bad about that, of course, releasing something with these things showing, we're assuming that they're working when they're not. But those will be updated evidently in the newest patch that should be coming out. I don't think he tells us here, but let's see. All right, well, so anyway, evidently there is a new patch coming out. He's pretty good. I mean, he's already on the 9th patch, and the game's only been out for a couple of months. So that's one thing. Brooks is very aggressive in addressing things, trying to make his games better. And putting patches out on a regular basis. So, I do have a lot of hopes for the game. I've already seen a few, some changes. I mean, you can already see in my game, even though it was against the computer, just trying a few different things gave me the number 2 class in the country, which, I didn't expect to be number 1, and I don't think I should be number 1, but I don't think a program like LSU should end up with, say, the number 45 class either, which is what happened in my first season. And then, of course, my second season in the online league is going to end up being pretty bad as well, because I tried something new, and it turned out to really be going in the wrong direction. So that's nobody's fault but mine. But, that was part of our not knowing how this actually works. Now, as he says, trying to find a 100% foolproof strategy that works every time isn't possible and will drive you crazy trying to find it. Well, and as I said, that's fine. I'm not looking for something that will break the game. I just want to make sure that it's basically easy to understand. And then, if you follow a bit, LSU should be able to come out and say, hey, do you want to come to school here and get, a bulk of top 250 players? They should not really end up going down into the 1900 range. And, they should basically be a top 25 recruiting class really without even trying very hard. You know, so, and you know, and to have a school, say you know, my alma mater, Louisiana Lafayette. I mean, they're a Sunbelt school. They should not be competing with the SEC for their top tier recruits. You know, the guys that are going there are the guys that want to go to LSU but aren't good enough. At the end of the day, is reality. So anyway, you know, a couple of good tidbits here. We learned about how to add in the points. Checking to see the scouting reports. Now, just kind of further clarification. You know, this guy has fallen off. He's now being recruited by Michigan, Ohio State. He's out of New Jersey. Winning, loyalty, playing time, security. Close to home doesn't matter, but, you know, and some of these may or may not be working at present time. But at the end of the day, you know, this close to home still matters somewhat. Just it's the least important of all of them, but it could still be important. I have to weigh out now who I'm recruiting against, where they're at in conjunction with him, and I'm also looking at the fact that we dropped from a 98 to a 75. So you really have to do a good job of remembering players, remembering what they were. This might be an off-the-wall suggestion, but if there could be something, maybe when you come to this screen, maybe kind of give a breakdown of, you know, from last week and year to date. So like he was 98 the first week, so we could show 98, and now we can see 75. When I sim the next week, let's say it drops to a 72, then up here it would say 98, 75, and then you'd have the 72 here. Or if it goes back up to an 84, you'd have 98, 75, and then 84, you know, when you highlight the line. Something like that to where you can kind of track at a glance without having to create a spreadsheet. You know, because let's face it, I mean, if I'm recruiting 20 players and this is a game that I'm opening up, you know, every couple of days, I'm not going to remember that. So, you know, if there's some way, I mean, if that's important information and it's information that you should be able to track, then, you know, I think there needs to be a way, and it maybe you don't even need to go into that much detail. Maybe you just have an up or a down arrow, you know. So we went from 98 to 75, so we could have a down 23, so down 23 points from last week. Something to that effect. And you know, there's plenty of space right here that you could put that in without taking up a lot of space. You know, and there was something else too. I think they said one of the things was this scouting points, you know, knowing what you're, you know, once you get up to a certain percentage. I think they are going to incorporate that suggestion of mine into the patch, where this will actually have something like it has total points spent. They're going to redo this box and have something about accuracy, you know, scouting report, and then just have like 80%, 40%, whatever, so you know at a glance, do I need to add points here, without going into every single card, because at the end of the day, going into every card is very tedious and monotonous. So the more that you can put here at a glance, and already, I mean, just in one of the patches, I mean, it used to be like this where all the recruits were here and your targets were all down here, so you could only see 2 at a time. So the fact that now you can actually see 8 at a time is very helpful. I would like to maybe see this go full screen at some point and be able to get, you know, 3 or 4 lines of players on here, but I don't know if that's possible, just from a programming standpoint. But, you know, that would be nice. I mean, you know, to be able to have, you know, another row or 2 more rows of players on here. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, a few things that I showed you on these guys that Francua suggested, going over some things that Brooks pointed out, and it looks like a few of the, and I'm guessing he's talking about these that we just don't know what they were, and they weren't clear. Those will be more fully implemented in the next patch, and those will be updated in the guide, which will be found over at the Wolverine website. So thanks for checking out the video. I hope you're enjoying the game. It is a good game. It's got a lot of potential to continue growing and become a great game. Highly recommend at least checking it out. I am having fun with it, even though I don't understand anything. And you know, the fact that I get so hung up on recruiting, here's why. It's a pro game. I mean, it's not a pro game. I've got a 90 prestige program. If I don't recruit well, I'm going to start losing games. My prestige will drop. It will get harder and harder to continue to recruit well. On the flip side, if you've got a lower prestige school, you need to be recruiting as best you can to raise your prestige, to start trying to get better players. And again, if you don't do that, you're going to just get worse and worse and worse, because you're getting players that aren't as good. And honestly, the OVR rating system, that's probably the hardest thing in Brooks's games to get your mind around how it works, and that's why I spent some time going over that in the first couple of episodes, in looking at players and how that OVR works, because it took me a while. I mean, it took me a good long while when I first started playing his pro game, because that just made no sense to me whatsoever. So but now I've gotten used to it, and it's still counterintuitive to how most games are put together. But hey, that's not a bad thing, to put something that's unique out there, because that sets you apart, and it makes you think more about the game, and it makes you it gives you something different rather than just being status quo. So that's not always a bad thing. But anyway, thanks for checking out the video. I hope this has helped. I'll probably wait for the new patch to come out, and I'm not going to save this because, like I said, I set it to auto recruit. But what I would like to point out is, wow, when I'm told not to go after just 4- and 5-star guys early on, the AI did that. I mean, you can basically go down here and they're all 4 stars with just 2 exceptions. And they're all basically top 100 players with just a few exceptions. So, if I'm not supposed to go after them, why is the AI coded to go after them, that way? Of course, they also do note, you will remember from one of the earlier videos, that they do say when the AI is doing it, they are more aggressive in coming off players and jumping on new players. So maybe that has something to do with it. Anyway, thanks for watching again. Have a good one.